All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is going to be a special edition episode of the Rewind. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Rewind is just a recap of village board meetings, kind of like a commentary. Before I get started with the presentation, I don't know, but it seems like there's some issue with the translation of some of the videos. So there's a lot of echoing of the video that I have included, but just bear with me. I kind of summarized those segments, but this is going to be a really in-depth and hopefully informative um, um, presentation for you guys. So long story short, let's go ahead and get into it. Um, just bear with me. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. I already pre-recorded the presentation, but I'm gonna have to play with the volume a little bit. There's a lot of echoing and different issues with the sound, but we're gonna make our way through it. But definitely, it's gonna be worth your time. So please stay tuned. So let me see about getting this up and running, and we're gonna get to it. All right, all right. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Rewind. As you well know, this is a special edition of the Rewind in which I'm pretty much going to cover the recent two board meetings, but specifically hot topics in reference to them. So it's going to be a real barn burner, a lot of interesting stuff to get into. So I'm not going to hesitate any further in getting started. So, as with all episodes, I'm going to start out by talking about the hot topics. Initially, I'm going to begin with the public comments, but then the other hot topics, they're going to be in various orders. But things that I like to cover in this particular presentation is about meeting decorum and mutual respect, the role of budget officer in reference to the village manager, the hot ticket item, the new vehicle purchase potentially for the village board president, and then the need for financial transparency, accountability, and oversight by the community in reference to how our local elected officials pretty much manage our money. So, that being said, let's get to it. Now, you guys are going to see me in the background manipulating the volume a little bit. On the website, the video footage wasn't really consistent, so there's certain segments where the audio is real good, and then there's certain segments where it's not, so I'm going to have to tweak around with it. But after each segment, I'm pretty much going to paraphrase, if need be, what the residents spoke about. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so that's Miss Flemster, and she was basically just saying pretty much that all voices are important. At the board meeting, there was different people saying things that if you don't pretty much support what the current administration is kind of saying, then you're disagreeable, you're being difficult, and she was just saying that you can agree to disagree. People can have different perspectives on things, doesn't make anyone better than the other, and that all views and perspectives should be respected. And I agree with her. In this next video, um, I'll let her go ahead and speak, and then I'll give my comment afterwards. Okay, and that's Miss Alexander, and she's pretty much echoing the same sentiment that we as taxpayers are entitled to know what our local officials are spending our money on. And just because we're inquisitive and we ask questions does not mean we're being difficult, but we're exercising our right for free speech and to be able to hold our government accountable. Okay. And so the key, I mean, everything she says was right on point, but the key issue is a lot of times, especially in this administration, if potentially you are very much so asking for questions that potentially individuals may feel that that information, the stuff they don't want to touch, they make it very difficult for you to get information. And you'll see in this presentation of my example what I had to go to in order to even bring information I have to you. I had to jump through hoops, and it's not accidental; it's intentional. So if you want people to respect your position, you need to respect the fact that we should have open, transparent conversations, not just when I'm co-signing whatever you say or whatever your agenda is. You're supposed to respect everybody's views. So that was pretty much what she was getting at. Okay, so before I get into this one, and because I'm trying to save space and keep this as short as possible, I didn't put in, I think it was Miss Alexander who made a comment about Dalton. And it was a reference to the fact that some residents feel that Maywood is becoming somewhat like Dalton. We as citizens are being treated like Henyard treated the people in Dalton or Thornton Township, and they're seeing things that are kind of Henyard-ish or Dalton-ish. And so this is Mayor Booker's response to that comment. Okay, so a couple of things there. And this is something that residents keep echoing. For the mayor to comment on the current financial state of our community when many residents have been complaining that we still don't have the results of an audit. They keep saying the audit is finished, but usually Baker and Tilly, the accounting firm, would give a formal presentation to the board and to the citizens so that we would know how our village actually stands. They just passed the budget without knowing how much in debt they are. So to say that financially we're not like Dalton, well, just remember, and I follow the Dalton politics very closely. Before, quote unquote, Henyard got into office and, as mayor, they were $3 million in surplus. And then near the end of her term, I think they said they were like $6 million in debt. Well, at last we counted, as the village of Maywood, we had an $8 to $9 million deficit. So, I mean, you can't really comment that we're doing so great financially. And if right now we don't have monies to give everybody a green alleyway, we don't have money to do a lot of the things that we should be able to do if we're really excelling financially, that statement, I'm sorry, that's not accurate. It's not accurate at all. And until we get that audit back, I'm going to stand on my square and say those type of comments can't be confirmed at this point in time. So, getting back to the issue at hand. So, the question is, why is it that people feel that potentially Maywood is starting to become Dalton-ish? Well, let me go ahead and give you a brief recap of Henyard. Henyard, in her latter years of her term, was accused of taking lavish trips on taxpayers' dime in Dalton and in Thornton Township. She was driving around or being driven around in luxury vehicles, Tahoes left and right. She was getting extraordinary increases in salary, to the extent that the salary of 200 plus that she got for being the supervisor over Thornton Township, she actually put provisions in the ordinance that if she lost her seat, then the position would go back to paying, I think, like $25,000. So exorbitant salaries for jobs that don't necessarily warrant that type of salary. So when we have similar kind of things here in Maywood potentially, then the question is, are people justified in feeling that there's some type of similarities there? So if you say, well, I don't believe it, well, here we go. I went ahead and I followed, like I said, the Thornton Township and Dalton saga. And this is actually a content creator called Everyday PJ. And he made a video that's called City Girl Mayor Tiffany Henyard Fights Trustees Over 17% Interest Rate Paid by Taxpayers. So let's go ahead and listen to this video footage.
That makes absolutely no sense. You're not making great finance. Excuse me? Please stay back. Oh, I got the facts, baby. You know I got it. Please stay back. I can hop over there and show you. Well, go ahead. I'm over here. I'm over there. The last time I did, before I was trying to do something to you. But let me tell you, here it is, dated December 22nd, 2022. The cash price of a 2023 Chevy Tahoe, $93,216.71. Interest and APR, $55,929.49. Total lease price, $149,146.20. Tell me if it's not facts, because your signature is all of them. I don't see that. Okay. At the end of the day, it's not about back and forth with you. It's about making financial decisions that is in the benefit of everybody. It's just not one person, and you can't seem to understand that.
Okay, so the moral of the story here is, I don't know what it is about Tahoes, but Tahoes and elected officials have become synonymous as the luxury vehicle of choice. And the young lady who was speaking at the end is one of the trustees, and she's basically getting on Henyard because of the luxury Tahoe vehicles that she's basically getting to put on the back of taxpayers to be chauffeured around the different municipalities. And she basically said, you are putting the desires or the wants of one before the masses. So my question is this, and I think a lot of residents are this, and I'm often reminded of an episode of Oprah Winfrey. And this is an episode that when I think of how elected officials, whether it's the Bensonville mayor or different mayors who are taking absorbent trips, there was a mayor in a certain, I think, Fulton County who was taking luxury trips to Africa and Europe on the taxpayer dime. And I feel like, especially with vehicles, a lot of elected officials feel entitled, like almost like a and that's how they're functioning, as though it's a sense of entitlement that on our backs as taxpayers, we owe them this, okay? And that is a very disconcerting thing. So, like I said, I think a lot of the comments about Dalton and Henyard is because of kind of similarities that we're seeing. And you have to understand, Henyard didn't start out as boisterous and outlandish as she ended up. You know, she started out with a sense somewhat of humility, and then over time, after getting support and being able to leverage that support, then she took it to the next level. So if people right now are starting to say, hey, the sky is falling, we're seeing luxury vehicles, we're seeing that you're basically getting increases in salary that are not consistent with what that position should pay, then should those residents' feelings be invalidated, or should they be listened to? So, moving on to the last public comment, I got up and asked questions. And if you know my content or know me, if I ask questions, it is for a certain reason. I just don't ask things not to ask them. So I asked specific, direct questions about the vehicle for the potential vehicle for the mayor. I asked what kind of vehicle, how are we going to pay for it? If we already have one vehicle now, what's going to happen? And, and the issue is this. In order for you to understand the response that I was given, I have to explain to you the different roles. Okay, specifically the village manager. Back in last year in 2024, I think they made an adjustment or amendment to the ordinance in which the village manager took on the role of being the budget officer. But irregardless, the key thing to know, and this is for FYI, if you ever want to know where the ordinances are, you can go on the village website and you can go under where it says code ordinances, and it'll pull up every ordinance, whether it's traffic tickets or public works or code violations. You can find all the information here. But for this in particular, here's the ordinance that specifically deals with the budget officer. And the main thing that we want to focus on is that he or she is responsible for ensuring that the budget is filed with the government agencies in a timely manner. This person also works hand in hand and is supposed to know what items are used to pay for what, the different balances of the department. And why this is important? Because when I went to the board and I asked specific questions about the vehicle, this is the answer that the person who, above all, should know the answer to the question. This is the answer that I gave you, and I'm just going to warn you once again, the audio on this video isn't that great, but I'll summarize what he said. So basically, Booker deferred to the village manager to answer the question, and Mr. Torres said, you know, in a budget meeting where it's public comments and they ask questions, he said this is not a question and answer setting, and that if anybody had any questions about the budget, they can make up an appointment, which is something that has never happened. The purpose of having the village manager, who is the executive, the enforcement part of our government, is to be able to answer questions about the budget in a budget meeting. But once again, with previous experience with Mr. Torres, he is synonymous for sidestepping questions, having circular conversations where he never addresses the issue, which is why he did not want to answer the question, because he didn't want to be held accountable for the answers to those questions. So that being said, if you don't believe me, you know I bring the facts. So let's go ahead. I need some music to get this show rolling. So let's go ahead and let's get to the real nitty gritty of this particular presentation. Okay, so the specific questions that I posed about the purchase of the vehicle is, hey, what kind of vehicle are we getting? The make and model. Has the vehicle already been purchased? What's the current balance? Because the mayor already has a Ford Explorer. That Ford Explorer was leased. So what's the current balance owed on the car? And then are we going to buy it outright? Because at the previous board meeting, Mr. Torres says we're going to keep the vehicle as part of the fleet. Well, for financial reasons, are we going to keep that high interest lease payment, or are we going to pay it off in full? Now, you would think that these are reasonable questions that a budget manager should be able to answer. But let me show you why he definitely should have been able to answer it. So here's the thing. When he didn't answer the questions, I went ahead and sent him an email on the 30th of April. And in that email, I specifically asked him those questions. His response was basically, hey, Ms. Vandiver, I heard you already put in a FOIA. I heard that the FOIA was complete. So, yeah, if you have any other questions, go ahead and reach out to me. Okay, my response was, and I'll summarize, well, I'm unsatisfied with that answer. If I put in a request for a FOIA, that has nothing to do with the direct questions that I'm asking to you, because there are certain questions that those FOIAs would never answer. And I stood firm. I basically said I gave you to the end of business day on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, to answer those questions. And I'm expecting the answers, or I'll be at the board meeting on Tuesday to have it further addressed. So that's where we left off with that. But this is where the evidence, I know I went to school to be a doctor, but sometimes I think I should have been an attorney, and if I would have been an attorney, I would have been on the prosecution side. So let me go ahead, fellow Maywoodians, and let me make a case for why I feel that response from Mr. Torres was completely bogus. Okay, so here's the question, one of the questions that I posed. Will the purchase of the vehicle come from the village board or the village manager's budget? Okay, well, if you don't know, before the village board goes into a meeting, they receive a packet, okay? And in that packet, it's filled with, board packet is filled with documents and information that they have about the subject. This is actually a document that was in the agenda and part of the board packet. Can you see who this is made out from? So this is a memo to the village board from the village manager dated the 17th of April. The board meeting wasn't until the 22nd, but here's the thing. In this memo, Mr. Torres basically says, even before the board has voted in favor of purchasing a car for the mayor, he's already moving money around in preparation for the purchase. Let me say that again. Meaning, when I asked him at the board meeting 2 weeks later, hey, have you purchased it? Whose budget is it coming from? 2 weeks previously, he already knew he was in the process of moving money around for the purchase, so why not just answer that question outright? Why not just be honest and transparent? Why make me have to put in FOIAs to try and get information that you have freely? But that's not it. Let's go on. In order for you to understand just how financially irresponsible getting another vehicle for this mayor is, let me go ahead and give you a little bit of the history on vehicles for the mayor. When Edwina Perkins was mayor back in 2020, specifically May 19th, the village board had a meeting. And on the agenda was for them to discuss a purchase of a sedan, which is a reasonable vehicle for one person, a 2020 Fusion, okay? Everybody on the board agreed. But let's look at who was on the board at that time. Besides Perkin, there was Brandon, there's Trustee Jones, Trustee Sanchez, Trustee Lightford, and Trustee Booker. So even back then, before making a purchase like that, they knew the protocol was to basically bring it to the board to have a discussion about it. They actually potentially had 2 board meetings to even discuss this issue. But I want you to see the price of the vehicle just in 2020, $25,000. Remember that. So, going back to the email that I sent to the village manager, I asked him, what's the current balance still owed on the vehicle, which is the Ford Explorer, the leased vehicle that the mayor is driving in and around now? And then what's the plan? Because the village manager had previously stated that they were planning on putting it into the fleet. So I asked about the money. Well, if you're going to have this lease vehicle and you're thinking of giving the mayor a new car, are you going to pay off the old lease? Or are you going to keep paying those high monthly payments on a leased vehicle that's going to become part of the fleet? So in order for you to get a better understanding, this is a lease agreement. And this vehicle original price was $49,000. Now, if you take the $49,000, this vehicle was purchased, I believe, in July of 2021, and you fast forward less than 4 years later, and you put the interest on top of that, we've spent over $54,000 potentially, if they pay it off, on this Ford Explorer. Okay, so keep that in mind. $54,000 on the first car in less than 4 years. So, the other question is this. I asked, has the village of Maywood already purchased the vehicle? If not, when do they anticipate the purchase of the vehicle? Okay, so you have the string of questions that I've asked. I've asked about the money, how much we as taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill for, have they purchased it, what kind of vehicle are we talking about? So let's go ahead and get to the nitty-gritty of the facts, and then I'll bring this whole circus of a charade together, back around together. So I would like to introduce you, John Q. Maywoodian taxpayer, to the 2025 Chevy Tahoe LX. Base trim model that we potentially are about to pay for. And when you say pay for, like, what are we paying? Well, if you're going to ball out, you need to ball out the best way. This is actually an invoice for the cash agreement. So they pay in cash, meaning we don't have money to give everybody a green alleyway, even though with $200,000 for a green alleyway, with all the money this administration is wasting, we could have gotten at least 2 additional green alleyways. But I'm going to digress. I'm going to leave that for another day. But we are paying potentially almost $65,000 for this village official to floss around in a luxury vehicle. Now, here's the big thing, because a lot of times we don't put the pieces of the puzzle together because we're so dumbfounded by just the foulness of the situation. But what we need to do is look at what the true cost of getting one person, like they said in that video from Henry, the wants of one person over the needs of many. What is the true cost to us as John Q. taxpayers? Over $120,000 has and will be spent in less than 4 years for one person to drive around now in a sedan that seats 8 people. I personally, and I'm going to snitch on myself, this weekend went to a Chevy dealership because I've never really seen a Tahoe, and I saw a Tahoe LX. Can you tell me why one person needs a vehicle that seats 8 people with only 16 miles to the gallon? Okay, I'm going to bring it back. And so let me move on. So yes, when Maria's Papas sent us those ugly blue and yellow letters in July, the worst month, where they show you just how much your taxes have increased, you can thank this type of mismanagement of your tax dollar for it. They brag about not increasing the tax levy, but they don't say a thing about their mismanagement and overspending of your tax dollars. So Financial Literacy 101 is coming, but this is the first one. If you spend more than you take in, you're going to remain in debt. But I digress. Let's keep it moving. So, That's the skinny on the village vehicle, and I'm going to have more information at the end of this presentation about more of our tax dollars. But for right now, let's go ahead and bring it down to meeting the quorum and mutual respect. At the beginning of this board meeting, and I encourage everybody to go back, especially for this part, and watch that board meeting again and watch it with new eyes. At that board meeting, at the beginning, it was National, I guess, Prayer Day. I'd never heard of it before, but it's basically a annual event in the United States that's held the first Thursday of May, where individuals or groups are encouraged to pray for the nation and its leaders, okay? Collective prayer. I mean, I thought it's supposed to be a separation between church and state, and I'm a Christian, so I'm not hating on it. But at the beginning of the board meeting, and you can see it online, I've seen it posted, I think, on I Love Maywood and the mayor's website. If you want to look at the prayer, you can go. But the mayor made a prayer, casting down and rebuking and calling into existence and just a lot of different things. And I'm not hating on it, but I've always believed that it's important for your walk and your talk to be in line, for you to practice what you preach. And a lot of time at board meetings, not just this one, they'll start with prayer and then in no time do everything other than what they prayed about. So I really want you guys to go back and watch the meeting. I know on my computer and the video, I don't think it was the best. It's far away. But if you get it on a big screen and you can look at the body language and the different things that people were doing and under the snide comments and just the passive aggressive behavior, it was very ugly. And I say that because it's important that if you're going to talk about how we need to have unity, how we need to set a good example for businesses coming in and how we need to do this, then your walk needs to be consistent with your talk. Meaning, if you talk about unity and you're leader and you're in leadership position, you need to lead by example. And so let's go ahead and real quick get into this. During the board meeting, the two most disheartening things I saw was minimization and dismissiveness. And so minimization is the reduction of something, especially something undesirable, to the smallest possible amount and degree. An example of that I'll get to on the next slide. The second word is dismissiveness. We all know dismissiveness is basically defined as showing that you don't believe that someone or something is important enough or worth taking seriously, and is often consistent with a sense of disdain and scornful attitude. So I present you this picture. When Trustee Sanchez in the board meeting mentioned that Trustee Jones' recommendations for what he felt he wanted to see in the budget was a wish list, that's a prime example of minimization. The invalidating of someone else's opinion because you believe your opinion is greater than theirs. We have 7 board members. Each board member is supposed to be an individual, and everybody's input should be equal. But when you have agendas and political slates that never disband and they are pushing their agenda, if they have the votes, they minimize the other side and make it seem as though they have no value. So I want you guys to go back and look at that part of the meeting and look at the behavior to shut down Jones and to shut down Brandon and to make it clear that y'all don't have a say at this table. What we want to do, we're going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. But once again, go back and look at that. The second thing is dismissiveness. And I put time to wrap it up because if you look at the end of the meeting, and there was still ample time, the dismissiveness. I mean, you have board members, when other board members are still talking, they're texting on their phone. So what you see in this picture is Mayor Booker and the village manager texting in the middle of a meeting. And my thing is this, I feel that's disrespectful because this is a boardroom. Business is being conducted. And just like if you were a judge and you're listening to the prosecution and the defendant, how disrespectful would it be for you to start texting? Or if I'm a doctor in surgery, I'm just going to go ahead and text in the middle. There's certain places where texting should not be allowed, and if you're conducting business and you're texting, you're definitely not paying attention to anything going on. And if you look at the meeting, you'll see constant behavior like that throughout the course of the meeting, which really show whose opinions are respected and taken seriously, and then whose opinion aren't taken seriously. Okay? And so, as I get ready to wrap it up, I just want to remind you guys that the Maywood Watchdogs newsletter is coming soon, and I'm actually finishing up an investigative article. And the article is going to take a deeper look into the wasteful spending of our tax dollars. I'm going to focus on a lot of other things in reference to how our tax money is being wasted and mismanaged. I mean, whether it's giving certain people who are part-time health insurance that they should not be getting, to other ways in which our money is just being spent carelessly, left, right, and center. So once again, like I said, a lot of great content coming to the Maywood Watchdog and the newsletter. That's going to be my first investigative article that's going to be coming out. And so, the other thing I'm excited about is, for many, many months, people have asked me, well, how can I be a part of the Maywood Watchdog? I want to get involved. And I told them, well, the Maywood Watchdog, when it started out, was just an information and educational platform. It didn't have membership. But as the brand is now growing and participation is growing, I decided to create an offshoot of it called CLAC. And CLAC stands for Citizen-Led Advocacy Council. And as part of that council, there's different committees that I'm going to be rolling out. There's 3 that I'm working on them right now. One is a youth committee, which is going to focus on issues confronting the young people in our community, whether it's from education, getting them active and involved, job training. That's what the youth advocacy is going to be about. And then there's going to be senior advocacy, worrying about health care, keeping them in their houses as long as possible, and keeping them active and dealing with issues that they deal with, whether it's depression or, just different things that happen as we get older. And that's need to protect our seniors. And then the last one that you're about to see a lot of that now. It's basically a commission that's dedicated to keeping an eye on our money. So that commission is basically going to be the Financial Oversight and Transparency Commission. A lot of times people talk about accountability and transparency, and that's part of it. When I first wrote the first Watchdog newsletter, I said those are 3 things. You need accountability, transparency, and oversight, but we haven't really, as citizens, been given them oversight. So that's why they've become so accustomed to doing what they want without any repercussions. Well, the Watchdog now has an oversight commission that's going to be dedicated to informing the community about what's happening with your money, who's using it or misusing it, and taking necessary action to hold them accountable so they can't continue with this foolishness. So I'm going to stop right there. But like I said, CLAC is on its way, along with a lot of other things. And I know this was longer than the 20 minutes that I usually do, but there was just so much stuff happening. So just as a reminder, next board meeting is going to be this Tuesday. I know we have board meetings back to back to back, but the board pushed back their April meeting, and now, we're having them back to back to back. But this is my last one for a while because I'm tired of them. But yeah, this Tuesday at 7, you know where it's at. But definitely check it, watch it online, or if you can, stop by. But please, please, please go back and watch this last board meeting so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But once again, I'm Claudia, the Maywood Watchdog. I hope this has been informative and you learned something. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and talking to